Sex is a taboo that needs to be more openly discussed. In this episode, Alex and I look at how the sex industry has fused sex dolls and AI, and what the potential societal harms can be to women and girls in particular. Have a listen and please let us know what your thoughts are. Thank you, Alex, for suggesting such an important topic and, of course, for your time and your insights. This is Two on a Mic. Rise up and be curious.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro e Two under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye Two under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji e Two under mic. Wala wachokre wabed piny biwawinje ero chako dumomit ndi Two and a mic podcast makende.
I'm joined a second time by Alex. Alex, it's great to have you back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. One oversight from our previous conversation, owing to the excitement of actually finally having you on, is that I completely forgot to give a shout out to Esheru, who indeed introduced us and therefore facilitated these debates. So
Yes.
yeah, thanks a lot to Esheru.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And also, happy Pride Month. I
yeah.
think it would also be remiss of us not to mention that.
Yeah, it is Pride Month and it's getting off to a cracking start. And we're having fun as well as bickering between ourselves as usual in the only way that we know how. So yeah, it's off to a cracking start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has your council's town hall stolen the pride flag yet, or not?
No, I haven't. I haven't actually looked because I've been so distracted with everything else that I'm like, oh yeah, it's Pride Month. I can, be a little bit more excited about stuff. But I've just been so distracted by everything else. I haven't looked, and I feel absolutely rotten. But I'm going to go and look later on, so I might have to get back to you about that.
Yes, please. I definitely
Yeah.
look forward to the pride flag update, which indeed we can thank the reformers for inspiring among the activists in this month.
Oh, honestly, it's like I don't know. They're getting tired. Apparently, it's beginning to get tiring for them. And I'm like, good, just please take a nap and let us get on with everything. Okay, go away, go take a nap.
Indeed, yeah.
Not easy.
There's one council apparently where they've cancelled all of their meetings for the month while they prepare whatever it is that they have to prepare for. So apparently somebody said that's just simply down to the fact that they didn't realize they had to do some work once they'd become councillors. But
Yeah.
I mean, who'd have known?
Yeah, no, it's almost as if, like spending all that time campaigning for something actually meant that you would have to do a job at the end of it. Imagine that. Wow.
Yeah, terrible. Absolutely
Yes.
terrible. I mean, what's the point, really?
Yeah.
But thankfully, we're not necessarily, or at least not directly, going to talk about these supposed reformers today. We are actually going to talk about something far more interesting. And what I'm really happy about is that you actually accepted the invitation of sending me a topic yourself that you wanted us to talk about. And
Yeah.
I have to say, it grabbed me straight away. Again, I would think it's best if you perhaps were to introduce it for us.
Okay. So the article is talking about an environment, or rather an establishment, that has put together AI and sex dolls, and it's proving to be quite popular. But as usual, this is all been kind of great. So, this is a nice new thing to try and all of that. But the problem is that stuff like this comes with a massive amount of misogyny. And most people, when I say most people that are paying attention, I mean men, aren't overly upset about it. And it's like, well, okay, these people might need a place to blow off some steam if they can't access sex in a standard environment, so to speak. And it's like, well, it's one thing to need sexual release and contact, but does it have to be done in such a misogynist manner where you go and hire a sex doll with a VR experience where you can do anything you want to her with no consequences whatsoever, as an indicator of maybe what you would like to be doing to a woman if you were lucky enough to get near one. So it's basically from the Laura Bates book that is mentioned in the article, The New Age of Sexism and How AI and Technology Are Reinventing Misogyny, and how none of this is a good idea. And this particular establishment promises the perfect experience for every budget. And I went and physically had a look at the website, which I'm not going to link it. And it promises the perfect experience for every budget. And I thought, well, let's have a look at the prices then. And they aren't unreasonable, I don't think, for what is being offered. So it's not something that is only available to very, very rich people. This is something that is going to be available to the general public. And you can hire these dolls for an hour at a time, or you can hire them for a couple, or you can hire them for like a nighttime thing. So you can do whatever you would like to that doll for the entire time that you have it. And the prices are ranging from 99 to 130 euros per hour, which again is not, I know people aren't made of money at the moment, but that is not an astronomically high price to pay for something like that. You know, it's not something that you'd need to save up a lot of money for to do, if unless you were profoundly poor, but you wouldn't be worrying about things like this. It's like the people who have got little money aren't going to be thinking about, oh, how much money can I use to save up for this and go and have sex with this really misogynist creation. It's not, I just don't think it's something that they're going to be thinking about.
That's how I understood it as well. As in, I think what you're trying to say, if somebody who's perhaps extremely poor, then they're going to have much bigger issues that they want to address rather than.
Yeah. And at the same time, it goes back to what we were talking about before we started the call, is that we've got things like this happening in a world where people are literally living minute to minute trying to survive. And it just baffles me and confuses me on levels that I did not know existed. Like how it's just, and it's so massively unnerving watching it happen in real time. Like people are creating things like this, and on the other hand, we are watching entire populations be eradicated. What the fuck? So where was I? Sorry about that. I went off on a tangent.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, yeah, we have to put the world, as it were, into something of a context. So you were talking about the price ranges, and you were on the website as well. But before we go into a bit more detail about the website and why indeed there is a price range, because people may not necessarily understand that automatically.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why perhaps this hasn't become such a mainstream topic is because in many cultures, sex remains a taboo. Now, the problem with sex being a taboo is that consequently, sexual abuse is a bit of a taboo. Misogyny and sexism also becomes something of a taboo. And if we limit the freedom of expression that we may have on these kinds of topics, then we're not actually going to get to the heart of the problem. So when we're talking about these kinds of issues, it should cease to become a taboo and start to become a social, political issue.
Yes. To me, it kind of goes back to when and I can't remember the year that the phrase was coined, the not all men thing. Of course, we know not all men are an issue or dangerous or problematic, but enough men are so that there's a social problem. And it's the same when it comes to things like this. There are so many problems, but you can't just say, okay, we can't individually look at every single person and think that everything that's going on in their head is all right, and it's not. We have to hold a section of people to account for this behavior, and we know it's not all men, but enough men are like this, and it creates misogyny, it's child abuse, it's everything bad, because talking about it and getting survivors to the forefront to share their stories so that we can try and figure things out and make them better is just you have to be quiet. It's a taboo. You can't talk about that. It will show us up. It'll put the family into bad name, you know, or it embarrasses me, especially in older generations, like in my mother's circles and her mother's circles. You just couldn't. You just kept it quiet. And if there was ever any issues in the home, any abuse, if the police came round, it was always the woman. You have to fix this. You are causing this problem. Figure out a way to fix this so we don't have to come round every night and deal with it. And it's all, the onus has always been on the woman to fix it. But women aren't the problem in this particular situation. I'm sure I had a point in there somewhere.
You always say that, but no, of
I
course.
don't know what else to say because I just start rambling and then anything can happen. So yeah. Oh
no, that's fine. No, there were a number of very significant points, and you made them all succinctly.
Thank you.
So going back to the issue with regards to the pricing range, so it was from 100 to 130.
For an hour, yeah.
Yeah, and in reading the article, which was prepared by Olivia Petter, she made reference, perhaps herself quoting Laura Bates, but she made reference to the fact that you could essentially order these sex dolls, these AI sex dolls, in any way you want. And I think you also alluded to that.
Yeah.
And that could cater to some very random tastes.
Yes. So one of the dolls on the website, actually, I believe, is called Red, and she arrives in a spaceship, and it's all very sci-fi and Star Trekky and things like that. And I'm a massive Trekkie, okay, so I'd be like, "Oh, this looks great," but she's the high end, what we class as a high end doll. So I think she starts at 130 euros an hour, and it's just, I don't even know where to start, because I think actually in the article it describes her in the first paragraph. So it says her scarlet skin glistens as if she's been dipped in a glittery tub of Vaseline. She is wet, soft, dripping with desire, and wants to be taken. She rarely speaks, if at all. For just 99 euros, you can do whatever you want to Red, and you don't even have to use a condom. She'll be waiting for you exactly as you want her, whether that is in a certain position or wearing specific lingerie. For an additional 69 euros, she will urinate for you. For just 12 euros, you can expect to find her covered in artificial sperm. And for just 4 euros, you can find her with a preheated vagina. I don't have enough therapy time to unpack all of that. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd even make it to the therapist's office really with the
What the fuck do we even? Wow. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
And you see, people have their own sexualities and the things that they like between consenting adults. That's all well and good. And masturbation is healthy, and it's not something that should be discouraged. And I know that it is discouraged in so many ways still, and it is still seen as taboo and wrong. I mean, it's not something that you should be doing outside. Obviously, people get into trouble for that, quite rightly so. You know, like you just know. But inside,
good to emphasize that, I think.
so yeah. Just emphasize that. Don't do it outside, please, for goodness sake. Stay indoors. Just do what you want to yourself. Just please don't hurt yourself in the process where you cannot be put back together again by a nice nurse that is trying not to laugh at you. You know. And then there's this, and I'm just like, okay. This tells us what you would like to do to somebody else. This tells us what your fantasies are. This tells us where your mind has gone. And people don't just wake up and magically end up into things like this. You're influenced by things as you grow up. Like so many people in the kink world, or just generally vanilla people, can remember their first crush that they've seen on the TV screen. And for some people, it might have been something as a cartoon character that was drawn in a way that appealed to them, or maybe they saw an old American TV show or something like that. In my child days, it was a lot of the boys used to rave about the Dukes of Hazzard because there was an actress in there that wore the tiniest shorts most of the time.
Actually,
And so
just as you mentioned that, I had to actually
uh,
think about it. And the really weird thing is that it reminded me of perhaps the first TV crush that I had. And it was, I don't know if you remember this movie, Kelly LeBrock
yes,
in the movie Weird Science.
I knew exactly which one you were going to say. Yes,
And this,
that oh my God.
and this, the strange parallel is that these two boys actually designed her on their PC.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
there are parallels, aren't there, with that story and this
Hmm.
story?
And that the thing is that the fact that they sat there with bras on their heads, that has not ever gone away. You know, there are memes out there that exist with boys sitting with bras on their head, trying to will the perfect woman into existence. And what I absolutely hate about this is the fact that I loved that film. I found it hilarious. And I'm like, I know what all of this means now, and it's deep, it's misogynist and everything. I know it's bad, but I grew up watching that film. But that was normalized. This is the thing; it was normalized. Women have been objectified and normalized in ways like that since forever, and it's just the way that it's happening now. It's just the medium is changing, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, what? The actual women that are in existence are telling you that this is unacceptable, that this is not good, it's not healthy. We don't want to be around men that are like this, and nobody's listening.
Yeah.
And you've got the whole male loneliness epidemic, and it's like things like this and why. I'm not saying it's all of the reason, but this is stuff like this. When women and girls find that maybe boys and men have been looking at stuff like this, or they find it hot, unless they're also into it, they're going to find that massively off-putting,
Mm.
you know. And it is misogynist, but it takes a lot of undoing. It would take a lot of unraveling and undoing to get us back to a point where everything is reasonable. And I'm not saying that as approved, because I am not. I used to be part of the kink community. I haven't been involved in it for a while because I have major issues with the way that they throw terms around like slave and things like that. And there are other major issues with it. So I, again, that's probably another conversation, but I am by no means a prude. But I think that when it is getting to a point now where things like this are already affecting teens and younger girls in schools because of how AI is changing the way that we access sexual enjoyment, we've got a major problem and we need to do something about it. And not enough people who can do things about it are even concerned. They don't care. They don't care. The only like people are more concerned, and this is a good thing to be concerned about. I'm not saying it's not. People are concerned about the environmental issue of AI, the energy that it consumes, and also the potential for political damage and deepfakes and things like that. But the big stories about it aren't about this particular section of problems within the AI world, like the violence and misogyny against women and girls perpetuated by AI development in tech has already exploded. We can't undo it, but we have to try and stop it from getting worse. And we are at a tipping point. If we don't stop it from getting worse now, it is going to get so much worse. It's going to produce a lot of seriously violent people. And, you know, or sure there'll be people out there going, oh, you know, it's not going to get that bad. It has been getting this bad for so long, and nobody is paying enough attention for it to stop. It
Yeah.
just perpetuates constantly. It would be lovely. It would be fantastic if we could make it so that men didn't have these urges and they didn't behave like this and we didn't have a social problem. But that's not how the world works, unfortunately. And I know that there are problematic people in other demographics. I am not saying that there isn't, but disproportionately, we have a major problem under patriarchy with men. And because they're not, because we are the entertainment to so many of those men, it doesn't matter. None of us matter enough for them to stop it. So what do we do? what can we do about it? Because I remember when Replica came out, I think it was, I remember encountering it in about, I think it was about 2017. And it was just like somebody that you would talk to, or like a bot or something. And it was just like a chat bot. And it's now grown into something else considerably. And it's not just Replica, you've got like Roblox and stuff like that on in the metaverse, which I've never used, I've never experienced. I do not know what that looks like in any way, shape, or form. But when I listened to the book that Laura Bates wrote on this subject, I was horrified. You know, that there are children playing in the metaverse with grown adults groping them, and Meta doesn't give a shit. They just released a word salad statement and then just went back to doing what they're doing. I mean, to me, I would like to know why young children are sitting on VR headsets unsupervised anyway, but that's another subject. That probably goes to parenting. But also, there are older boys and or teens who are doing this to smaller children or women or other girls in whatever VR world they're in. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. Where did you learn to do that? Where did you see that? Where did that first manifest to you that that's an okay thing to do to another child or another human being, regardless of their age? Where did you pick that up? And this is the question that we have to ask, because if we don't, we can't nip it in the bud. And it's almost always, it's learned behavior that they've either seen on various different types of media, or it's behavior that they're seeing in the home, in the familial setup, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, I mean, in the article that you sent me, the owner of the particular establishment said that there were limits, no children, no abuse, and so on. Even though I believe one of the dolls could have blood applied to it or such, or as in fake blood, of course. So it does horrify me. Again, what you're saying with regards to these bots. People should also realize, if there is a part of the iceberg which appears above the waterline and it shows us this cybersex with AI bots, the significant portion of that iceberg remains hidden in the dark net, and we don't really know. I mean, and then bits and pieces of that world sort of emerge the more familiar we become with the general context of what is happening with cybersex and so on. So, there is, as you say, this worrying element to it, where perhaps parents don't have the opportunity or the time to understand exactly what their children are doing. But then there is this other darknet variant where maybe these kids are not actually under their parents' supervision, but they are being borrowed or taken and told to behave in a certain way, and are perhaps being trained offline to behave and respond in certain ways, which in itself is obviously illegal and horrific. If that is something which is appearing in the mainstream to that extent, then we can imagine what horrors are occurring behind that mainstream.
So you touched on something there that I'm very glad you touched on, and because I haven't heard very many people talking about it, but it's on with regards to social media or trying to drum up interest, because negativity and anger gets interest. People will look at something when they get angry. You just watch British social media. You mentioned something terrible happening to a dog, and it is the end of the world for more people than it is if something terrible happens to somebody in Palestine. Okay, but you create, anger around something or upset, it will get attention. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there are places, I think they call them rage rooms, where people will sit with social media bots to stir up anger and hatred. So it stands to reason that there are probably armies, or not necessarily armies, but groups of teens or adolescents that have been say, hey, come and do this, come and say this, earn a bit of money. There are ways to manipulate young people just by giving them money to say and do terrible things. especially if they are from poorer backgrounds where they don't have parents that give a shit about what they're doing. They're just like, okay, I need to survive. My parents aren't looking after me properly. So what can I do to generate money to survive? So they end up looking for stuff, and that's when they end up being drug runners, or they end up doing online stuff to, that they'll be paid for maybe by Bitcoin or something else. I don't know. People might say, that just sounds like you're reaching a little bit. Don't be daft. Things like that don't exist. They do very much exist.
They have existed for a long time. I mean, this is
Yeah,
also how drugs are sold all around
yeah,
Europe.
yeah, exactly. It's not like now. It's extremely easy to buy drugs online. You don't even have to try. I mean, it's not something that I do, but if I wanted to, I could go very easily and find somewhere to do it. I mean, all you need to do is download Telegram, for God's sake. It's riddled with it. But this is it, and it's easy for kids to get into this stuff because the fact that you said that from the website, it said that no, like no children, no abuse, anything like that with regards to how they were treating the dolls. The fact that they have to say that means that they obviously realize A, people are likely to ask, and B, they know that there are certain people out there that do like that kind of thing. So that's a step in the right direction for them, as far as I'm concerned. Like, if there are ways that people can have an experience that they wouldn't ordinarily have, say, for example, a disabled person that wants to have a fantasy experience, I don't think that they should be denied that at all. Like, as somebody who's worked in the adult industry, like for some people, a sex worker is their ability to feel what intimacy feels like if they can't find that somewhere else. And I don't think that that should be anything for them to be ashamed of. And the same goes for sex toys or maybe experiences like this, which are more fully immersive. But they have the capacity to be good for some things, I believe, but this is not going in that direction. It's already headed in a terrible direction, and it's been going on under the surface for longer than we realise. Like, when I mentioned Replica and also the Roblox and stuff like that, that's been going for a couple of years now. There've been boys in trouble at school for taking pictures of their fellow schoolmates, the girls, and then putting them through AI apps that make them nude,
Yeah.
or it turns them into pornographic material, and then sending it to all the other kids in the school. Rather than the schools doing anything about it to reprimand the boys, they're just telling the girls to wear shorts under their skirts and stuff like that. Like, so that they can't get upskirted or something. I was like, that is not the way that you should be doing this. It's going to end up being the way that it happens because, unfortunately, I don't think anybody's ever going to challenge it. I just think we are going to be perpetually trapped in this boys will be boys situation, and it's
Which is
never going to change.
which is also completely missing the point, because the photograph
Yeah,
can be a normal front on, not upskirting at all, but
yeah,
the software itself can interpret the dimensions of a person and then reproduce them naked,
yeah,
from the information that is given. That's the whole point, I guess, of the
yeah.
algorithm.
They get hold of that, and then they can do, and it goes viral, and there are websites devoted to things, all these deep fakes and stuff. There are websites for people that you just like in your life, people, famous people, celebs, whatever. There's so many of them now, and it's
Yeah.
just exploded. It's gone, and now girls are terrified to go to school because of what might happen to them.
Yeah.
Will they have their lives ruined? And this is how it's already poisoned things. And how have they gotten access to that so easily? Why haven't parents been watching them and saying, look, hey, where are you getting this from? There is a lot of responsibility with, or a lack of it rather, from parents in this way, not challenging their boys' behavior when they are, behaving so badly, like doing things like that. They get away with it consistently. And now it's exploded to a point now where girls are terrified to leave the house. And then it's gotten to the point where there's a AI-driven cyber brothel that exists. And that's how it doesn't just start as like a little replica chatbot. It's moved up, it's gotten stronger. You can have like full-on VR relationships with some of these AI bots, which is not healthy for people who struggle with social interaction. people might think, oh, it's a way for them to interact with people, but that's not a person. It's a computer, and that isn't helping you how to socialize with other people properly, and it will not help you overcome your social fears. The only way that that will happen is if you do a little bit at a time until you can feel somewhere comfortable around people. And I understand that's difficult because we can see how terrible people are being in real time now. So that perpetuates the need for them to want to stay indoors and interact with a robot rather than a real person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure there was a point in there somewhere. Um, the seed is it's been sown, it's grown, it's exploded. We are at the point of no return now. If we do not nip this in the bud, if we do not start to set up actual consequences for this behaviour towards women and girls when it affects us badly, if we don't stop the AI and technology from just taking us and running away with us for on whatever they want to do, I don't think we'll be able to rein it back in again. And the way that women and girls will be treated as a result of this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say much for the behaviour of people that are teaching those kids to be like that. We need to nip those in the bud. We need to stop that. But how the hell do we do it?
Yeah, and well, one part in the article written by Olivia Petter, she quotes the activist Laura Bates as saying, "It deliberately blurred the boundaries between the real and the robot, encouraging me to think of her as a real sentient woman. Yet the situation is one in which there can be no possibility of consent." You mentioned consent as well. There are legal restrictions with regards to age as to whether or not consent can be given. And we know that if somebody is a minor, no legal consent can be given, and that is considered statutory rape.
Yeah.
When there are boundaries such as these, which are blurred and which kind of give rise to a person's imagination to believe that, do you know what, I am ordering this sex robot to my preferences and I can behave with that robot as I will. The problem is then when that person does encounter or that does have an experience with a real person, are some of those behavioral patterns going to be repeated with the real person? Because obviously, as we know, the robot perhaps is made of material which is of slightly sterner material than a real human being. But on top of that, a robot doesn't necessarily feel or express pain unless, of course, it's been programmed to express it in a certain way. What kind of dangers are the future partners of these people being perhaps opened up to?
Exactly. And this is assuming that they are able to sustain a relationship with somebody, because people have different abilities, obviously, and not everybody is as good at relating to other people as some others are. You know, that's just unfortunately the way that it is. And it is a very lonely and frustrating experience if you are not good at socializing. But using a robot like that who cannot consent, and you can do whatever you want to it, and you know that you can do whatever you want to it without any repercussions or it saying, no, please stop, you will completely lose sight of what it is to behave in an appropriate manner. And if you were to get involved with somebody and you found that you couldn't perform, or you got frustrated with them, or your temper was flying from 0 to 100 in seconds because it wasn't the way that you expected it to be, or it's not the way that you expect it to be because it's fully human response, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. And if you can't properly relate to another human being in an appropriate manner, whether it's a sexual scenario or whether it's outside just walking down the street, using sex bots and things like that is not the answer to help you at all. All it will do is enforce a dopamine cycle, which you will seek nastier and nastier content to satisfy because it gets bigger. There is another book called Your Brain on Porn. I just want to say briefly that I'm not anti-porn. I have to say that I'm not massively impressed with it, but I'm not anti-porn. That's another conversation. But there was another book called Your Brain on Porn, and it's how young men end up getting hooked on seriously, seriously nasty porn and how quickly it happens. Yeah. And what you can do to prevent it or get away with it or get off looking at porn, or rather not getting off, because that's a completely different phrase, which different meaning. Get away from it. There we go. That's a better phrase. Jesus. Anyway,
Those
how you
pesky
can pull yourself with.
prepositions.
Yeah. And as part of the book, there is a little bit of a religious thing there, which I'm not a massive fan of. But hey, if it helps people get away from something that's really bad, okay, fair enough. But it talks about that these wild porn extremes don't just come out of nowhere. They grow, they form. A seed is planted in childhood and older, and it does happen, especially on the internet now, when you have got people that can't relate to other people very well. They've got the internet to look at as a source of entertainment for whatever part of their body, and it doesn't always go in a good direction. And so that, before sex dolls and things like that appeared, they would go out and maybe take it out on somebody, because you'd have boys that bully girls. Obviously, there are girls that would gang up on boys as well, but predominantly you would get like little boys ganging up on a girl and terrible things happening. And so if your human experience is only shaped by something like the cyberphone, well, it's not even a human experience, is it? It's wires, it's vibrators, it's data. It's not a human experience, and they cannot be. If you don't want a human experience, then please stop using a human experience to build your sexual fantasies on. And no, that's not me saying that you should go and try and engage with other things sexually before anybody says anything else. It's a case of there's no soul, there's no life, there's no emotion involved in that doll. And if the only emotion that you have for that doll is violence and rape, then you need to go and get some therapy and stay away from women and girls. Yeah, there was a point in there too, I think.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No. The issue obviously is complex, and you tend to address a number of issues in the same paragraph, as it were, if we can consider it that way, because I think you've got so much to say on the issue that all of these concepts keep coming forward, and I think that's fair enough. We do need to look at it also from the perspective, okay, what kind of a solution then are we suggesting? So at least in the first instance, this is a topic that needs to be talked about quite openly. There needs to be educational material put out there. When I say educational, though, I'm not necessarily targeting 12 to 13-year-olds in high school.
No.
I'm talking about adults being trained at work, perhaps, or on television, or with some kind of documentary and so on. People need to be educated. The general public need to be educated on what this means, what the potential of it is. But on top of that, for a long time, technology has been running ahead of law. The law cannot keep up. The law has this unfortunate predicament of being an extremely traditional and conservative body. It doesn't like to change too quickly. And even though there are a number of different issues which you could perhaps say, yeah, but that's kind of covered by the law, when we are venturing into this kind of technology where you're talking about a completely inanimate object, it's very difficult. And there are some very clever lawyers that can argue their way around and say, well, this law doesn't necessarily apply to that situation. So it's very important that there is also a legal and judicial conversation about AI sex and cybersex. But what kind of stakeholders do you think should be represented in that? Because whenever there is a committee set up, invariably that committee is composed of men.
Mhm.
And that way you're not going to get the most balanced views, are you?
No, for me, I would say that the committees need to be run by women and trans people from ethnically diverse backgrounds, and also people in the disability community. Basically, everyone who is in a straight white person, because there are all kinds of ways that people from different backgrounds interact with the internet and from different parenting styles and things like that. So if we want this to work, we need to bring people together from those areas and say, right, how do we apply this to keep your children safe and to educate your children on how to behave properly online? How do we do this? Because I don't want old white men anywhere near this at all. They're the ones that have created this. I don't, and yeah, I get that there are people, there are women that work in tech, there are people from all backgrounds that work in tech, but predominantly the really rich people that make all the decisions and get everything where they want it to be are rich white men. And they are the last people that should be making decisions like this. So it needs to be put in the hands of mothers and families of people from ethnically diverse backgrounds that,
And of course, poor communities, because their
yeah, yeah,
children in general
yeah,
are
no,
the ones. Yeah.
exactly. We need people from everywhere. And I would, rather than having it being mostly white people with handfuls of everyone else, it should be everyone else and maybe a handful of white people. Yeah, because we need to listen so much. I mean, I'm here blathering on at you, and I'm like, oh God, I need to be listening more, and I'm blathering on at you. Bloody hell. Anyway, yeah, it should be, because this doesn't want to, because the way that they'd get around that, if they were to actually launch something like this, now all right, we're gonna put somebody in charge of this that we think you'll trust, it will be a white woman. Of course it will. You know, that's what they put a white woman, and she, oh, I'm going to hire all these people, I'm going to make it look really, really good, and then it will just go quiet after about 5 years and it will never be heard from again. This needs to be something that's on the ground up in everybody's local community, like as if you brought in areas. It needs to be a community effort, because you've got to figure out, right, okay, we've got these rules here. How can we apply these rules effectively in our environment? Because if you've got a poorer area that doesn't have the facilities that kids have in a more wealthy area, because this happens no matter where a kid is, whether they're poor, whether they're wealthy, this happens, the way that you'll be able to apply things will be vastly different, which means that we need a lot of people involved to get it done. But again, it's making enough noise for people to want to do it, because people just want to get on with their lives. Again, I understand that as well. You know, most people have just switched off to what's going on, and it's horrible. And part of me doesn't blame them, but we have to pay attention. And if we don't nip this in the bud, if we don't get the parents of kids together with, healthcare professionals as well, because we'll need input from psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody that deals with mental health, people who deal with neurodivergent stuff, autism, ADHD, all of these things have an effect. So it's going to be a gargantuan effort to get it done. And I think a lot of these companies, because they are creating new things way faster than laws and rules can be formed, because this time next week, something new will have come out and it will make something else obsolete. That's how quickly things are running. But they know that they're running too fast for us to keep up. So we're going to right, well, we can't necessarily keep up. What we need to do is put a wall up and say, right, now enough is enough. But it's getting people it's rounding people up to do that. And when I said rounding people up, I did not mean to imply that they were cattle. That's just what came out of my mouth.
That's fine. Gathering stakeholders.
That's a good idea. Yeah. That one.
On the basis of fairness too, the article refers to, so I think of 17 or 18 sex dolls, 17 of them, I believe, were female. One was male, and but very much under-operated seemed to be the case. So by popular demand, of course, the female models were much more popular.
Yeah.
But this is, however, an issue which, even in a far more limited manner, does touch upon the need for women to also relieve themselves sexually as well within that kind of an industry. And the issues to which you referred before are also, I believe, relevant to those as well. We are talking mainly with regards to people with needs, perhaps, which are not being addressed for whatever reasons this may be. There may also be, as you suggested, stress issues, mental health issues. It may even in some cases be a situation where people don't want to bother with any kind of emotional situation and just want to get straight into whatever sexual pleasure it is that they would naturally receive from that situation. But again, the problem that we are highlighting is not those issues in themselves. It's the potential for violence to be derived from the interaction and the potential damage that could thereafter be done to future partners. And I believe that to be the core.
Yeah, we get serial killers, for example, and this is not me saying that these guys are going to be serial killers, but once they've done something and it was something they've been dying to do and they've done it, they get such a high from it, they want to go and do it again.
The escalation, like from animals as children, and then it gets,
it escalates, and this is the truth. It goes back to the book From Your Brain on Porn. It escalates, and people. I mean, there was another book that was talking about the takedown of Pornhub, and they were looking at some of the things that search results and things like that escalating to really nasty stuff, and then you've got very niche websites talking about otherworldly things that I'm like, I appreciate the humor in this, but I don't want an ovipositor. Thank you very much. But again, it just escalates. It gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And if somebody then transfers this from, they go and they let off steam with a sex doll in an AI VR environment, maybe a few times, and then they're realizing that it's not doing it for them anymore. What do they do next? Yeah, it escalates. Everything just escalates. And it's like, well, this is what we need to prevent. But it's already, as I say, it's already happened. And the thing is, AI, full disclosure, I am not a fan of AI at all. I don't use it. I know people that do. I wish they didn't. And I understand why some people do, because it has capacity to help people who with disabilities or other issues that they may have that they need help with. That is an ethical, I think, way of using it. But I don't use it, and I have no plans to use it. But while all of this is going on in the background with the sexualization of everything, as it always ends up being, and the fact that it's actively damaging the environment, not doing the tech sector any kind of service at all, although it's just a huge monster now. Tech isn't about making lives easier. It's about how much money can it make for the oligarchs, essentially. Yeah, it will end up with people being hurt, and it will. If we're letting our kids on this, because it's already got hold of kids in school and they've already done the terrible things with it, and schools don't seem to be able to prevent it. They just want to cover it up and encourage the girls to be more vigilant rather than handling the boys properly. It's just not going to. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the world is seeing more violent crimes being committed by children and teens. And I never thought that I would ever say that, but they are. And they expect it. I'm expecting to open a newspaper now at least every couple of days and see that a teenager or an adolescent has done something to somebody else, or they're involved with drugs from a young age because they're trying to survive. And that is heartbreaking. If we need to look after our kids better so that they're not treating other kids like this, and thinking it's okay, and then going out and leaving school and then stabbing somebody or stabbing somebody in school. Knife crime is an issue. Like, when are we going to step in and do something about this and nip it in the bud at the start, rather than waiting for it to get so big and so damaging like this before we start to bring laws in? Because I know that some I think is it New Zealand that's I think it's New Zealand that's banned social media for
In
kids under
schools.
16. Yeah, in
Mm,
schools or rather, or they've banned mobile phones in schools. It's one or the
mm,
other. I need to double check. And other people are saying we need to follow suit. And I am all for kids having the ability to reach their parents if they need to. They could do that with a little brick phone, as we call it here, like
mm,
not a smartphone, just a mobile phone. They could do that with one of those, and they could still stay in contact with their parents if needs be. But I personally am a fan of kids under the age of 16 not having smartphones. But
mm.
that's just me personally. I don't expect other people to agree with me. I don't have kids. I have temporarily raised other people's kids, but not a long time. So it's for me, I think a lot of it is we need to take these things away from them, but we also need to train parents on what's acceptable use and how we can prevent things from happening. And also, if these kids are wandering down incredibly dark paths very, very early on, it's a case of, well, where are your parents? Why aren't they paying attention to you? Okay, if they need help, if they need support, have they asked for support? And unfortunately, they do ask for support and there isn't any there. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we've got a massive social problem. This sexualization of women and girls by AI and tech and the entire society as a whole it's a massive social problem. But because it's affecting women and girls more than anyone, especially women and girls from ethnically diverse backgrounds, because their bodies are policed in so many more ways than white people's are. People
Yeah,
don't care enough to do anything about it.
yeah. I think one of the main takeaways from this episode will be that we need to take this conversation out of the sort of the niche area. We need to make it more mainstream. Adults and parents should be able to openly discuss these things with their own children from the age that they feel comfortable discussing these issues with them but preferably not waiting too long, because otherwise their kids become greater experts about them than they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And we need to be, as you said, also, I mean, a lot of places have to represent a safe zone, a safe area for people. If a person doesn't feel safe, then they're not going to open a conversation up, or they're not going to visit that area. And if we want our children to communicate with us as parents, as trusted people who love them, then we need them to realize that these kinds of topics are safe topics for us to talk about. And I'd like to think that that's one of the main take homes from this particular episode. And also, I know you say that you are somewhat chaotic in your conceptual formulation.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that, especially with me in the two episodes that we've done together, you challenge me, and I hope thereafter also the listeners, to think about things from a different perspective. And even if people sit here and they're shaking their heads at what we're saying, even they, I hope, will appreciate the fact that these are important issues. They need to be discussed. And if we don't talk about them, if we're not willing to talk about them, then none of them are going to be resolved for anybody's benefit.
Yeah, this is the thing. I know that specifically within political circles, there's a lot of polarization going on. But I am one of the people that will talk. I will talk to people that I have differing views with if they will listen to me. But if by the time I finish talking to them, their feelings haven't changed, then I probably won't engage with them again. But I do try to engage with people. So yeah, I'm not going to be somebody to shut you down immediately. I understand why some people are. I'm too curious. That's my problem. I want to know what's going on. So yeah. Anyway, there you go. But I'm glad that I have inspired that. And if anybody does have any comments about either this or the other episode that I did, I'm fairly sure my details are floating around out there somewhere for you to come and find me. I would also like to put links to the books that I've mentioned in the podcast episode, because I would ideally love for people to pick the books up and read them, or at least put them on maybe a to read list that might be a million miles long, like mine is.
Hmm.
But they are very important things for us to read. And we do need to do something about all of this, like yesterday. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now.
But also, again, you inspired. I thought if people have questions that they would like you in particular to address in a future episode, then they should also feel free to contact us,
Yeah,
and we'll try to do that. So
yeah. I'll just. I think I can't remember if I put my Blue Sky information on. I'll put all that in there anyway. And if people want to come and find me, they can do.
brilliant. All right, excellent. Alex,
Okay.
thank you very much. Always entertaining,
Thank
always
you very much.
insightful. Yeah,
Thank you
and
for having me.
yeah, always. And yeah, until the next time, take care.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike. Two and a mic.